my name is Gracie and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really exciting video and I have been so excited for this video for literally weeks. I am going to be reading the Odyssey and I can't wait, I'm so excited. I've only read like 20 pages this morning, but it's already incredible. It's so informative. I just wanted to tell you that I'm reading this and I'm excited. And I matched my outfit to it as well. I tried to wear a lot of blue and well, you know, the hair and the gold. Like, I essentially in this video want to watch the film, read the book and just give you every single thought, all of my thoughts. I've already watched the film, so I have another clip that I will put into the video of my initial thoughts on the film, but I think those thoughts will become more nuanced and developed as I actually read the book. For those of you who don't know, I absolutely love classics. I love mythology. I studied classical civilization in college for 2 years and I read the Iliad, the Aeneid and a lot of Greek plays. I love Greek plays. I think they are hilarious. So I just love all of that genre, all of the history. I absolutely love ancient history. I love ancient culture. I think it's beautiful and I will never tire of learning from it, and that is why I'm so excited to read this. I also want to show you my bookmark, which got me through my A-levels. This is the bookmark that I used for the Iliad and the Aeneid, and it's my Athena bookmark. I have really shaky hands, I'm just so excited. It's my Athena bookmark and it's so cute. I'm on page 17. I am annotating the book. I will take you through my annotations and my key and my themes later, but this is what we're reading. So I'm going to tell you my initial thoughts on the film now and show you me opening it, and I'll see you later. So I'm going to open my package finally. This has been on my floor for over a week now, like a whole week, and I haven't opened it because I've wanted to open it on camera and film it, but I'm so excited to have this book in my possession. I can't wait. So oh my god, it's so beautiful. Oh, it's so beautiful. And it's floppy. It's like proper floppy. Oh yeah. And it's like deckled edges as well. Like that's like, do you see what I mean? So cool. Oh my god. It's a map. Oh my god. Wow. Oh my, there's 2 maps. Oh my god. There's 3 maps. I guess he does travel. There's a world map. Okay, that was my unboxing. I can't believe I have this in my possession. Finally. I have to tell you of the film before I go to bed while it's still fresh in my memory, because that was one of the most insane, incredible films I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, I was so ready to hate on it because it wasn't the same as the book, but like I think it was a good adaptation. Now I completely understand where the controversy is coming from. Like, I completely understand that they did change a lot, and so I completely understand why a lot of people are upset. Like, they did take out a lot of the mythology aspect of it and they did change a lot, but I think as a spectacle film, oh my god. Firstly, it was loud. It was so loud. I don't think it needed to be that loud. I think my ears are a bit damaged. Like, it was genuinely like when the cyclops comes in, like his scream is deafening, and like just when the background music, the score is so good. It's so incredibly good. It's so powerful and meaningful, and I was literally sat there and I knew what was gonna happen, but I was sat there like, oh my god. It brought so many emotions out of me. I was on the edge of my seat. I was in full anticipation. It was such a powerful movie. I think that it was really well cast. I think that Matt Damon did a great job as Odysseus, and I didn't expect to think that. Like, I didn't expect to love the casting so much, but I think it was perfect. Obviously it has its flaws, but I think that overall it was just amazing. Like, the way the war is depicted, it was so gruesome, but it didn't glorify it at all. Like, it really showed kind of how war is the end of human civilization. That's one change that I really liked. It really showed kind of how these heroes paid and how it was because they were so flawed, and you see all of their flaws, and I really appreciated that. And I liked that Odysseus was very aware of these flaws and also knew that war was bad and brought bad things to human civilization, and kind of the fact that he wanted to repent and he wanted to start again. Like, I really liked that aspect of it. I don't really know much about the Calypso bit. Like, obviously that was quite a big part in the film, but like, of the retellings that I've read, I think that Calypso's always kind of been like brushed over, so I don't really know how that is in comparison to the epic, but I will find out soon when I read it. But I'm so excited to read it now. Like, that was such a vivid film. It was beautiful to watch. Like, I could watch that over and over again. It did not feel like 3 hours. I can't get over how Agamemnon was portrayed. Oh my, don't even get me started. Like, good, in a good way. There is not a Greek warrior that I hate more than Agamemnon. He is the most vile, disgusting hero in the world, and the way that he was portrayed was like terrifying. So like, there's one bit where they open the gates of Troy, and that's a really long scene. It takes them a very long time to open the gates of Troy. And they open it, and then he's just standing there, and you never see like his full face. Like, you never see him without his armor on. Like, he stands like shoulders, head taller than everybody else, and he's got his helmet on, and he looks magnificent. You can tell that he's the leader, and then the music kind of is just like wow, and it's like so powerful, and then all the army kind of storm in front of him, and he's just central. He's there, and you watch him kind of walk through Troy, like you see him from the back and stuff, and you just never fully see his face, and I loved that so much. Like, he was terrifying to look at. Really sad that we didn't get to see the bag of wind being opened, but I also think that like that maybe would have ruined the intensity and dramatic aspects of the film. The pig scene with Circe was so visceral. Ugh, that was disgusting. Loved it. So gross, so gross. She like molds their faces, like she like hands on molds their faces in and them into pigs. There's a scene where there's the shipwreck. I think I went blind for a little bit. Like, if you're sensitive to light, do not watch this film. I think that the ending was probably the most different from what I know, because obviously I still haven't read the full thing, but I think that the ending was very, very different. It was a lot less kind of violent. I say that, it was still very violent, magnificent, incredible to watch, but I think that it had a really good message and meaning behind it that related a lot to modern day. So they are my thoughts from just watching it. Like, I've just got home, it's 11:30 right now. I'm so tired, but I had to just get all of my thoughts out, and if I have more thoughts I'll go over them. But main standout points: incredible music, incredible cinematography. The Agamemnon scenes, as much as I hate him, I was terrified of him in the film. And the end scene when Odysseus is fighting the suitors, I also thought was incredible. It was just, oh, it was such a good film. I was so ready to like hate on it, and I take it all back. I loved it. Okay, we have unlocked a new part of the house. I'm in my kitchen and I'm about to go to my friends, but I wanted to tell you about my thoughts on the Odyssey so far, because I've actually not updated you since I started reading it, and now I'm almost 200 pages in and I love it. It's so good. So I want to tell you my tabbing key. These are the tabs that I'm using. They're the tabs that I use for everything. I love them so much. Here is my key. So I've got yellow for fate, the gods, and free will. Light green is for piety, customs, and justice. Dark green is for cunning, disguise, and self-restraint, because there's a lot of lying in this book. Dark green is for memory and grief, and a dark purpley red is for glory and honor. Normal red is for women and gender, and then pink is for kind of funny, ridiculous, and moments that I love. And just like quotes, general quotes that I love, but they don't really fit a theme. And then I actually added like a grey light blue, and that's for language and location, because there is so much that is said about the language choices. Obviously, because this is translated, there's so much about the choice of language, and I just find that so interesting. The introduction is long, it's really long, but it's so good, and it's so worth reading. So Emily Wilson, who is the translator of this book, says that memory is said to be the mother of the muses, which I thought was so beautiful and poetic, and how the poems in ancient Greek are like a patchwork, because the language is like this mismatch of loads of different languages. And I'm definitely of the opinion that the Odyssey was written by multiple people, compiled over years of different stories from different times. I don't think that Homer is a being a single being in himself. I think that Homer is a collection of these stories into one big story. That's the opinion that I have, at least. And also, I don't know whether it's because this is just a different translation, but this doesn't sound like Homer. Like, I've read the Iliad and it had a very different tone and vibe. And yes, that could be just because of a different translation, but I also just think that it's very unlikely that Homer wrote both the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's just such an interesting topic to think about, like who wrote it, who compiled it, because obviously it spans over so many years and we have no idea when it was written, who it was written by, when it was kind of composed and then compiled into a text. Like, it's all so mysterious and I love that. It speaks about location as well, because in Homer's world, for example, Ethiopia is said to be located between the sunset and the dawn, which is not very specific. And it kind of speaks about places in this magical way, but there are maps, which I find, again, so interesting. So it shows you Odysseus's world, and essentially Troy is here and Ithaca is over here. So this man literally had to just go around here, and yet he goes to every single one of these places around the world. But Wilson basically speaks about how this relates to the real world and how the Odyssey can kind of intertwine with the real world, and how Greece as like a unified place didn't really come about until after the Trojan War. So people that would then go on to be defined as Greek were in much smaller troops, like for example the Myrmidons. And it wasn't really until the 6th and 5th centuries, so like 600-700 years after the Trojan War, that Greek-speaking people kind of defined themselves as Greek people, in contrast to barbarians, which was the Persians and the Egyptians. So obviously when you're reading it, this was roughly composed around the 8th to the 6th century, and obviously Troy was in the 12th century, so 400 years before this was composed. So it's all a really long time period. So that's why we can't really take it seriously as like a historical account, because whoever did compose this, whoever they were, was writing about stories from 400 years before, which is a long time when you think about it. Then it kind of speaks about how the Dark Ages, which is between the 12th century to the 8th century, so between Troy and when this was written down, was the Dark Ages of Greece, because Greece was illiterate. It was kind of the downfall of civilization after Troy, which I think the film of the Odyssey touches on a lot, kind of speaking about the sea people and like the decline of civilization. But essentially this oral tradition of speaking this poem came about because it was a way to memorialize a good time, a golden age. Emily Wilson says that it perhaps echoes a real collapse of Mycenaean civilization through civil war, which obviously we see a lot in the poem and just Greek stories in general. I thought was really interesting is that it speaks about Xenia obviously as hospitality and friendship, and how Xenia is Zeus's law and guest friendship. And then that's how we get our word xenophobia, which is the fear of strangers and foreigners. But also there is a word called xenophilia, which is the love of strangers and the love of unknown objects. And I thought that was so beautiful. I actually didn't know that that was a word. Then it speaks about kind of further this guest friendship and how guests in Greek times would be welcomed into the palace, and you had to treat even a beggar with kindness, because a beggar could be a god in disguise. So you had to treat them all with kindness, and you had to wash them, provide them with food, and only after this guest has eaten can you ask them a question, which is so interesting. Like, you can't ask them anything, and then if you are a good host, you will then send them away. Like, you have to have this whole process of sending. You have to give them gifts, give them food for their journey, because obviously they didn't really have money. They just kind of exchanged gifts and treasures. Then it speaks about how the Odyssey as an epic poem in itself is a nostoi, which is a type of story that means homecoming. So that's where we get our word nostalgia, which is also really cool. So then in a translator's note, which I think was even more interesting than the introduction, which is hard to say because genuinely I was reading this and I was learning so much from it. So if you do read this edition, please read the introduction as well, because you will learn a lot of valuable stuff that will help with your reading of the text. But essentially, Emily Wilson says that in this edition, she tries to echo the Homeric style of fluency. There's an elephant in my house. She tries to echo this Homeric style of rapidity and fluidity, how Homer speaks with this directness and this plainness of thought. And she says how a lot of modern translations will actually complicate the text to make it sound more epic, but actually Homer wrote quite simply, and obviously he used a lot of formulaic ways of retelling so that it would make it easy for poets to memorize. So she really prizes simplicity, not in like a simple language way, but just in like it flows more and it fits with the poetic rhythm of what Homer was trying to do. So obviously it's going to be very different to the Greek, like all translations will be, but she aims to make it more faithful because it sounds more like Homer, which I think I found a little bit difficult to begin with because it doesn't feel like you're reading an epic, because it doesn't necessarily sound epic. It's very, very easy to read, very accessible, but that is the point. Like, that's what it's supposed to sound like. 2 more things on the translator's note. I know I've waffled so much about this, but I just find it so interesting. So Wilson says, I try to avoid importing contemporary types of sexism into this ancient poem, instead shining a clear light on the particular forms of sexism and patriarchy that do exist in the text. So obviously, this is written over 2,000 years ago. It's based over 3,000 years ago. So obviously, yes, sexism will still exist, but in a very different way to what it exists now. Obviously, they lived very differently. So she says how a lot of translators will add derogatory terms to women, like obviously slut, whore, all of these things, and will also make Helen really self-effacing and full of self-hatred. But actually that's not present in the Greek text, and Wilson says how she doesn't include any of this derogatory language because they just didn't use it in the ancient Greek text. And actually in the text, Helen doesn't blame herself. Helen is very sure of herself, she's a confident woman, and that's one of the things that I've now realised that I didn't like about the film, is the fact that they made Helen this victim in terms of Menelaus is horrible to her and she obviously has that scar on her face, and that's just not it at all. Menelaus is like a golden retriever. Obviously, take that with a pinch of salt because he is a Greek warrior and he's still not the nicest, but he's not this hard, tough man that he was in the film. That's not who Menelaus is at all. He's very much in love with Helen. Helen is treated so nicely. She's not blamed really for the war in this. In the Iliad, she was like, oh, I did this is my fault. But in this one, she's very much like, yeah, no, it happened, but kind of moved on now. Like, she doesn't linger on it, and I really like that. In the ancient Greek, Penelope's hand is described as thick. And obviously, if you write that in modern times, that's not going to have the same connotations that it did back then. So only male heroes are described to have thick hands. So it's actually a massive compliment that Penelope would be described to have thick hands. But obviously, to a contemporary audience who have different connotations for that word, you're not going to take it in the same way. So Wilson says that like even tiny details like that, it's really hard to come up with the right word, because if you put steady hand, that doesn't exactly fit. But also you don't want to risk it sounding like she's fumbling with something. You don't want to say a heavy hand because then it sounds like she maybe doesn't want to do it. And then strong seems too neutral. So she goes with muscular, and I think that was a great choice. And also just so interesting to see how like translations can't be fully faithful, because then they won't carry the same meaning that they did in the past. And so Wilson's really trying to keep with that meaning by changing the text accordingly. The epic itself is really readable. Like, it's so interesting to read. It's very fast paced. It begins by saying, tell me about a complicated man, and says how he wrecked Troy. And I have another translation of the Odyssey, and I read that too. And instead of saying complicated, it says resourceful. And instead of saying he wrecked Troy, it says he sacked Troy. So obviously very different interpretations of this hero, but I don't think that either of them are entirely positive. It's not like the Iliad where it's like sin, goddess, the anger of Achilles. Like, this is a complex man, and he's going to be a complex character. Some particular passages that I have loved have been where it says that Athena spoke to him with words that flew like birds. I thought that was gorgeous. And then the start of book 3, it says, leaving the ocean streams, the sun leapt up into the sky of bronze to shine his light for gods and mortals on the fertile earth. I thought that was really beautiful as well. And then again it says, my words took wings in book 4, and I just think that it's so beautiful to say that like your words are kind of flying, your words take to the sky. Like, I love that so much. This book is rich with quotes of grief and memory, and the gods help everything. Like, nothing would get done without the gods. Without the gods' help, no one would do anything. The gods, I guess, are kind of like, if you don't believe in the physical forms of them, they're kind of a metaphor for dedication and determination, and the gods act as a motivator and they inspire people with ambition. So if you don't believe in their physical forms, they definitely act as this positive impact upon the characters in terms of giving them that drive that they need to complete their actions. So the gods definitely do drive the plot, like, enormously. So that is where I'm up to. I'm up to the end of book 4. So we finished Telemachus's bit, which is him going on his little journey. So we actually haven't seen anything about Odysseus so far. You hear about him, but we've not actually seen him as a character. So very excited to finally see the hero of this poem. I'm loving it. I'm just loving it so far. I've just finished the Odyssey. I want to tell you all of my thoughts. I tabbed it a lot and I love it. I love these tabs. They go so well with the book. This cover is just gorgeous and this was such a good translation. Really, really recommend this translation. Just to start off with, like, it's incredibly readable and it feels like you're being sung a poem from that time. Like, I was really in this book. The fact that it's written in its poetry form, the fact that it's simplified to a Homeric style, it just really, really told the story well. Like, this is an excellent translation, storytelling wise. Love it. I have a lot of pages that I want to go through with you, a lot of things that I loved, hated, like, not an issue with the translation, just like the story in general. And I have a list also of what pages I want to go to. So firstly, I want to talk about a simile which I thought was really interesting. This was the simile that was used to describe Odysseus's reaction to the story of the Trojan horse and the story of what he created. Obviously Odysseus was the one who came up with the Trojan horse. And it's a really weird simile. So it says, Odysseus was melting into tears, his cheeks were wet with weeping as a woman weeps, as she falls to wrap her arms around her husband, fallen fighting for his home and children. She is watching as he gasps and dies. She shrieks a clear high wail, collapsing upon his corpse. The men are right behind her. They hit her shoulders with their spears and lead her to slavery, hard labour, and a life of pain. Her face is marked with despair. In that same desperate way, Odysseus was crying. So weird, like, so weird. So firstly, I feel like what's so great about the Odyssey, which I feel like I haven't seen in other epics that I've read, like it wasn't in the Iliad, which Homer is supposed to have constructed as well, is that the women's stories are told a lot more. The harshness of women's lives are really explained here. They're not just side characters who are prizes. Like, the reader is meant to feel pity for the women who were sold into slavery, rather than just think, oh, they're just women in slavery, you know. Like, this poem really explores the tragedy of women in war. And it was so weird to kind of say that Odysseus was like that, because is this saying that Odysseus is feeling guilty because he caused so many women to become enslaved? Or is it saying that Odysseus is the victim? Because if it's saying that he's the victim and comparing him to a woman enslaved, okay. The other thing is that in the Iliad, Odysseus was constantly quick-thinking Odysseus, like that was his epithet. In this, the translation is more like, liar, massive liar, couldn't possibly tell the truth if he tried, Odysseus. And I love that, I really love that. Even Athena is like, oh, you liar, you deceitful man. But like, she's praising him for it. But like, this man literally can't tell the truth. When he could ease people of their pain, he lies. And there's one bit right at the end where he's about to go and see his dad for the first time in 20 years. And he says to himself, he's like, oh, I could embrace my dad and we can have a lovely hug. And he's like, or I could test him and make him sad. And he literally makes his dad sad and hurls some insults at him and is like, you look like a slave, why are you so old and dirty? And then the guy's like, oh, I've lost my son. And then Odysseus makes his dad really, really sad until his dad starts to sob and pours dirt over his head in like grief. And then Odysseus is like, surprise, it's me. Why does he feel the need to do that? I don't know. He's so self-absorbed. Anytime anyone was telling their sufferings, he was like, but me, what about my sufferings? Film definitely portrayed him as this guy who was very aware of his faults. He was aware of all the damage that he'd caused. But in this book, he's aware of the damage. He knows that he's not perfect because he knows he's caused a lot of suffering to others. But he's also constantly like, oh, woe is me. He takes a lot of naps. He sleeps a lot. Everyone sleeps a lot. It's always like, oh, and then they fell asleep. And then rosy fingered dawn. But I like that. It's like, it's predictable in in a good way. I don't know about you, but I hate not knowing the endings, and so this is great because of all of the stuff surrounding fate and like prophecies and everything. Homer literally spoils the entire book. Obviously the stories are very well known, so like you probably know what's going to happen anyway, but when you read it you literally get spoiled all the time, so I'm quite a fan of that. I don't know if other people would be. Something that I think is crazy is the custom of gift giving, but it's just to an extreme level when Odysseus goes to the Cyclops' cave and the Cyclops eats his men and is understandably a little bit like, whoa guys, what are you doing in my house? Because if I came home and was expecting to have a lovely evening with my sheep and there were a bunch of soldiers, like tiny little soldiers in my home, I'd be really confused and I probably wouldn't want to treat them nicely because you're in my house. Like, why are you in my home? So Odysseus is like, oh, we came to your house and I wanted to see if you were a good person, to see if you would give me gifts. I broke in and you should give me gifts or you suck. And he hurts the Cyclops for not treating him well and giving him gifts. So I guess friendship? But I do think Odysseus takes it a bit too far. Greedy man. By the way, all of me moaning about the book is me enjoying it. Like, I love to laugh at the silly men, you know, so I love it. Like, anything that sounds like me complaining is actually just me loving it, just so we're clear. It was also really nice having read Circe, because I felt like Circe to me seemed like more of a really fleshed out and exciting character. In my head I could kind of imagine what she'd been doing before they turned up, like how she'd be feeling afterwards, when they left and everything. Like, it was quite nice to know how her life pans out, because then you can slot her into the story and like create different branches of stories from that. Something that I thought was really interesting is when they go to the land of the dead, but Odysseus and just Homer, or whoever has written this in general, puts forward the stories of women first. Like, when Odysseus is greeting the dead and speaking to the dead, he speaks to his mother, and then he speaks to all of the famous mothers. He speaks to all of the mums of heroes, and he speaks to the heroes later, but he stops his story and he doesn't intend to do that until he's asked to tell more. And I just thought that it was really interesting that the women's stories came first, that the mothers were praised for their kids more so than the kids were praised for being heroes or whatever, but it was like the mother of this great hero, like, you know, she gave them life. And I think that this epic gives women so much screen time, like it gives them so much page time, and I love that. Like, it really prioritizes the stories of women, and obviously women don't have a very good fate a lot of the time, but like nonetheless it still tells their stories, and I really liked that. Like, I feel like women had such a bigger role in this story than they did in the Iliad, and I just loved it. Like, it seemed quite modern to read. Obviously it's incredibly misogynistic, you know, it can't be that modern, but I was thoroughly surprised with how much women's stories were prioritized and told. Something that was also really cool is that Eumaeus, the slave of Odysseus and Telemachus, he is the only one who is addressed in the poem. Like, he's the only character that the poet actually addresses with, I think it's called an apostrophe. He says you, Eumaeus, like he says, you said this. Like, he actually second person kind of addresses him, which is so interesting because it's the only character that is done for, which must mean that he's important, and it's like the poet is really speaking to him. But I actually have no idea what that means, but I thought it was really cool that like it wasn't Odysseus who was kind of addressed, it wasn't him who was favoured, it's this really loyal slave of Odysseus's who is directly spoken to by the poet. Telemachus is a little bit, he is not nice, he's horrible. He shows up and Penelope's there to lead her household. She is there because the suitors all want to marry her, and Telemachus just constantly tells her to go upstairs. All he does is scold her. Like, all he does is say, Penelope, this is a man's job. Go upstairs, go back to your weaving. And I don't understand why he does that. Like, he's not mature in any way, and I was not a fan of him. Did not like the way that he spoke to his mother. I don't think that he spoke to her in a very respectful way at all, when the respect should be there. Like, that's in their customs to be respectful to your mother, but he was acting like he was this big boss man. He really wasn't. Also, in relation to women, when we go back into Hades at the end, when we go back to seeing Agamemnon and Achilles and their reactions to all of the suitors coming down into hell, like Hermes brings them down and they're like, why have so many of you died, what's happened? The suitors tell the whole story about like what Odysseus did and his whole family and everything, but Agamemnon only responds about Penelope. He doesn't say anything about, oh, Odysseus is heroic, he's got his house back, he's no longer disrespected. It doesn't say anything about that at all. The only thing that Agamemnon picks up on is Penelope. He says, "Lucky you, cunning Odysseus, you got yourself a wife of virtue, great Penelope." Now, yes, he's probably saying this just because he's bitter, because his wife killed him. But then he says, "Her fame will live forever, and the deathless gods will make a poem to delight in all those on earth about intelligent Penelope." And then he does go on to say, "Not like my wife." But I still thought that that was so interesting. Like, yeah, it's probably out of bitterness, but he doesn't mention anything about the men or anything about the suitors that died and the respect around that and how it's a little bit contradictory. It doesn't really address any of that. It just speaks about Penelope and how loyal she was and how great she was. And I'm taking that as a positive thing. And I just think, again, it's like pushing forward these women's stories. And then a little bit further back, when 12 of Odysseus's women are hung because of their crimes, it's made very clear that there's like contradictions to do with their deaths. Odysseus says that he will kill anyone who's not been loyal to him, and he will kill the enslaved women who weren't loyal to his wife. However, it's said a couple of times how they weren't the ones who were in control. Specifically this quote, where Odysseus sends Telemachus out to kill these women, and he says, "Take them out, hack at them with long swords, eradicate all life from them." But then he goes on to say, "They will forget the things the suitors made them do in secret through Aphrodite." Both of those things suggesting that the women had no choice in the matter. So he acknowledges the fact that the suitors made the women do that. He acknowledges the fact that it was probably Aphrodite who inspired this inside of them, but kills them anyway. So it's a very contradictory paragraph, and I feel like we're supposed to think, this is a little bit of an injustice. The maids may have been innocent in this. I definitely think that the poem puts forward a lot of interesting morals, because obviously you have the gods' laws and you have what is right and what is wrong, but those distinctions get so mixed and so tangled together because of what is actually right and what is wrong, and how the gods have favourites and how people disrespect these laws all the time. So it's very interesting because no one is fully good. No one is fully good because everyone murders, everyone kills, everyone isn't peaceful, everyone does things that they shouldn't and isn't respectful at times. But then it's about, I guess, the greater good in the end. So I think it's a very, very interesting tale of morality and gender and gaining glory. I will say though, it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I've been a massive fan for a really long time, and I know a lot of the myths, so I know a lot of the myths in this, and I've wanted to read this for ages, and then obviously the film came out. So I've listened to podcasts on what happened in the book. Natalie Haynes's Stand Up for the Classics is my favourite podcast ever. You need to listen to it, it's so good. But I've listened to that, I've obviously studied classics in general, and I've read other epics, and then obviously I've watched the Odyssey, the film, but still nothing kind of prepared me for what this actually was. I am slightly disappointed because I thought this was going to be a great epic tale of adventure, but he spends so much of this book faffing about. So if you didn't know, because this is an epic poem, it's split up into books instead of chapters, so it's split into 24 books. The first 4 books are about Odysseus' son Telemachus, and about him kind of travelling to other lands to hear of news of his father. And you hear about Odysseus a little bit, you hear about Troy a little bit, but you don't actually see him until book 5, when you kind of see about Calypso, and then Odysseus goes to this island and they help him get back to Ithaca, and that's where he tells some of the stories of his travels. But those stories actually don't take up much of the poem at all, and I felt like a lot of them were rushed over. Like when he's fighting the giants, when he goes to the island of the Lotus Eaters, I thought that that was going to be like a massive deal. Even Circe was only 1 book, which I guess is a lot in the grand scheme of things. Like 1 out of 24, that's good. But in my head, I was expecting more of like how it was in the Iliad, where it kind of really lingered on things. It was very magnificent. But this just, it was more kind of like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And then by halfway through the poem, he's already back in Ithaca, and you get some flashbacks, some flash forwards, whatever. You get like the fates telling you what's going to happen. But literally for half of the book, he's in his house, and there's such a massive focus on him being a beggar, him testing people, and him telling people lies. So it's kind of just empty, pointless story because he's making up who he is, so it doesn't really add anything. And I still loved it. I still think it was an incredible epic, but I think that I went into this thinking, firstly, that it was going to be chronological. I didn't expect it to jump, you know, a lot and cover a lot of different characters, but I thought that it was going to be a bit more like the Aeneid, which is the Roman epic by Virgil. I thought that it would be more like Book 1 is Odysseus leaving Troy, and then book 2 is the first trial that he faces, and then all of that until he gets home. I didn't think that there would be so much focus on other things, and I really liked that we saw so much from other characters. Like, I really appreciated the fact that the other characters were already fleshed out. You saw Menelaus, you saw Helen, you saw Telemachus, you saw Penelope. Like, you really saw all of those characters, and you get a lot of stories amongst it. I was just a bit sad. I wanted more adventure. But that being said, this was still incredibly engaging, incredibly entertaining and fun to read. I loved reading it. It took a bit of adjusting with the translation, because I think with older translations it maybe seems more epic because it's written in prose, but when it's written in its poetry form it took a little bit of adjusting for me, but I still loved it. I loved the way that this was written. I think that Emily Wilson provides so many explanations of her choice of which word to use in the translation, and I thought the introduction was incredible. And as much as I was slightly disappointed by the story, I still think it was such a fun story, and I'm so glad that I read it. I enjoyed it more than the Iliad. The Iliad is definitely more war, bloodshed, all of that. This did have so much mythology. The gods were constantly getting involved, and I loved it. It was gossipy, it was messy. This had so many layers to it, and I loved reading it because it's not just the story of Odysseus. You really have a whole world here, and you feel like you're in that world. You can picture it, and I think having watched the film I could picture it really easy as well. And if you haven't watched my other videos, I'm a big advocate for watching the film and then listening to the soundtrack from the film while you read the book, and I think that that works really well with this as well. I think that the Odyssey soundtrack is amazing, and I think that it really adds the suspense that's needed for this book, because it's definitely easier to get lost in it and feel the tension when you're listening to tense music. But I think that what the film doesn't capture is, firstly, all of the women's lives that are gone into detail and recorded in this book. I genuinely think this book is really good for female representation for its time. Okay, it's not probably great in the modern day, but for its time the female representation is amazing, and I think that it's very good psychologically with speaking about morals. And I mean, I tabbed it a lot. I learned so much about hospitality and grieving customs, learned so much about glory. I think it was so cool to see Odysseus go to the land of the dead. I think that that was a really great part. I loved that. I loved when him and Penelope finally recognized each other and they reconciled and came back together. I think that that moment was really beautiful. There were a lot of beautiful things in this text, and I just would recommend it so much. So that's my review of the Odyssey. I do have 2 editions of it. I can't remember if I've shown you already, but I have this translation as well, which I got years ago. But these books I don't think fare very well with like actually reading from them, because the like cover wears off. But I have got 2 beautiful editions. I think that they are absolutely gorgeous, and I want to reorganize my shelf to have both of these on show. I don't know which way around. But that's for another video. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video. I loved making it. I loved being completely immersed in the world of the Odyssey for the last week. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I have a feeling this is going to turn out to be a really long vlog, but I had so much fun, so thank you for coming along with me, and I will see you in my next one.